told you in 2004 that Terror would still be putting out records that matter in 2026, I probably would have called you a liar. What I never could have imagined is that this is their 10th one and it still hits hard. Terror is not a legacy act or a nostalgia trip for people who just remember One with the Underdogs. Terror has been consistently touring and putting out albums for over 20 years, and this album is a reminder that they're still better at this than most bands half their age. Terror's 10th album, Still Suffer, dropped April 24th through Flatspot Records. Produced by former founding member Todd Jones, this record is aggressive, personal, and uncompromising. It's about carrying pain forward and a damage that just doesn't heal. It's about deciding to keep going anyway. 20 years in, Terror isn't coasting. They're proving they still have something to say. Terror formed in the early 2000s in Los Angeles, and they were built around Scott Vogel after Buried Alive abruptly ended. Vogel had already put in his time with Slugfest and Despair before that, so by the time Terror started, he was already a household name in the scene. Terror came out during a specific moment in hardcore, post that Hatebreed crossover success, but still pre-metalcore oversaturation. They were never trying to be the biggest band, they just showed up and did what they do. Terror put out records like Lowest of the Low, Always the Hard Way, and One with the Underdogs across the 2000s. They became one of those bands that never stopped touring, never stopped releasing, but also never tried to pivot towards whatever trend was selling. And that's rare, but it worked for them. Through it all, Terror just kept showing up. Their last album, Pain into Power, dropped in 2022. It was solid, well received, and it did what it needed to do. But it didn't really break new ground. Still Suffer is their 10th full length, and that's a milestone most hardcore bands never reach. And the question going into this record wasn't whether Terror could still make music, it was whether they could still make music that mattered. The current lineup features Scott Vogel on vocals, Nick Jett on drums, Martin Stewart and Jordan Posner on guitar, and Chris Linkovich on bass. Most of them have been around for years now, so this isn't a revolving door situation. Still Suffer dropped through Flatspot Records, and Flatspot has become that go-to label for modern hardcore. Gulch, Mind Force, Drain, Pain of Truth. So Terror signing with them signals something. It's not a legacy move, it's the statement that they're still part of the current conversation, not just remembered for the old one. Todd Jones produced Still Suffer. And if you've been a fan of Terror, then that name should probably mean something. Jones was a founding member of Terror. He played guitar on all the early records before leaving to focus on Nails. Bringing him back to produce isn't just convenient, it's a direct line to what made the band work in the first place. Jones might not have a lot of producing credits under his belt, yet he knows how to make heavy records. Just browse through his Discogs and you'll see a massive list of bands he's been involved with that matter. His production here is tight but raw. It doesn't sound overly polished in a metalcore sense, not locked in with triggered drums or excessive compression. It sounds like a modern hardcore record should. Loud, aggressive, and just a little feral where it needs to be. Unsurprisingly, the press material described this album as 10 fast, aggressive, in-your-face tracks. And that's not wrong. There's no experimentation for the sake of self-aggrandization, no acoustic interludes to stroke egos. It's not loaded with guest features designed to chase streaming numbers. But there are a few carefully selected ones that add to the tracks.
Nothing good lasts forever, it's never coming back. If nothing was of value, one step forward, two steps back.
They're all people who Vogel actually knows, people who Scott thought made sense on a Terror record. And I'll admit the Chuck Ragan one did surprise me a little, until I remembered Buried Alive's first show was with Elliot.
Bound to war, of dreams.
And let's be real, there was pressure here, even if the band wouldn't admit it. 10 albums in, you either prove you still have something to say, or you confirm you're just running on fumes. Jones being back in the producer chair meant expectations were higher than usual. Let's call it what it is. Still Suffer is New York hardcore with some West Coast vibes. That's always been Terror's formula. Vogel came up on that New York hardcore sound. Madball, Sick of It All, Agnostic Front, but the band has been based in LA long enough that that West Coast heaviness has seeped in. This record is Hatebreed's grooves, Madball's bounce, but without any of that metalcore polish. The riffs are simple and heavy. There's no odd time signatures, no jazz chords. The guitars chug, the breakdowns hit, and the tempo shift between fast hardcore bursts and mid-tempo stomping sections designed to make people move. The drumming is precise but never flashy. And Vogel's vocals are exactly what you'd expect. Shouted, rough, angry, but still controlled. He's not screaming for the sake of screaming. There's intention behind every line. 20 years of touring will do that. He knows how to pace himself, how to land a phrase, and how to build towards the moments that matter. And he is definitely going to get a few stage dives out of these tracks.
Everybody! I wanna see you move! I wanna see you move! You fuck it up!
The production choices reinforce the old school approach. This doesn't sound like a 2026 hardcore record that's been run through the same plug-in chain as everything else. It sounds like a band playing in a room, not just compressed into oblivion. Todd Jones didn't try to clean them up. Erase You From My World is a solid opener. It starts with nearly a minute of instrumental buildup before vocal even comes in. These days, most hardcore records front-load vocals. This one makes you wait, lets the tension build, and then drops you into the album proper. And the breakdown on this track sets the tone for everything that follows. Fear the Panic, you know, the single that features Chuck Ragan from Hot Water Music? This is one of the faster tracks on the record. Ragan's voice adds texture without softening anything, his presence makes sense given his punk roots. The track is stomping and aggressive, designed for live shows. The title track, Still Suffer, is the emotional center of the album. The lyrics are about damage that doesn't heal and pain that you carry forward whether you want to or not. Vocal sounds exhausted, but not defeated, just aware. The line, "You're damaged like me, still suffer," isn't a complaint, it's a recognition. Beauty in the Losses opens up with something close to a melody. The first minute is almost pretty by Terror standards, and then it collapses into heaviness. It's a brief digression, but it works. It shows the band has more to offer, but without losing their identity. The album's closer, Deconstruct It, is just over 2 minutes, but the track runs 8. After the song ends, there's nearly 6 minutes of voicemails left for Vogel by people across the hardcore scene. Austin Sparkman from Haywire, Andrew Vacante from Combust, and various legends and newer faces. It's admittedly a strange choice, and it could have been gimmicky. Instead, it reinforces the album's theme. This isn't one person's pain, it's shared and it's a collective. Let's be real, Vogel has never been subtle. That's part about what makes his lyrics work. Still Suffer is about exactly what the title says. The presence of pain, the inability to outrun suffering, and the weight of carrying your past forward even when you'd rather not. Strength, I couldn't find it. The hurt of my past kept me divided. That's the opening line of the album. No warm-up, no metaphor, direct statement. And the lyrics throughout follow this pattern. Vogel writes about shame, doubt, rage, and isolation. He writes about pushing people away because it's easier than letting them in. He writes about deciding to change even when you're not sure you can. This isn't political hardcore, it's personal. The themes here are internal, like mental health and self-worth. The struggle to believe you're capable of doing better. And in 2026, that resonates. A lot of people spent the last few years hitting walls they didn't expect. And Vogel's writing speaks to that without tiptoeing around it. The voicemail section on Deconstruct It really highlights this. Hearing other people leave messages for Vogel, some supportive, some confessional, turns the album into something larger than one person's experience. It's a picture of a community that, at its best, hold each other up, even when the music is about falling apart. The album released the day before Terror played Sick New World in Las Vegas, with a full tour alongside End It, Pain of Truth, and Start Today, running all the way through June. This isn't a record designed to be digested in isolation at home with your record collection. It's meant to be heard live with a room full of people who already know the words. And piling on, the documentary A Deeper Struggle, directed by Derek Rathburn, dropped the night before the album. It follows the band's Latin American tour from earlier this year and addresses what it means to keep doing this after 2 decades. For fans who want context behind the music, it fills in the gaps that the lyrics only allude to. And it's too early to talk about a legacy for an album that's only been out for a couple of days, but we can talk about what this record represents. Terror is 10 albums deep. Most hardcore bands don't make it past 3. The ones that do often coast on past success, touring on nostalgia without putting out any new material that really matters. Terror has avoided that. Still Suffer isn't a nostalgia play. It's a current record that happens to be made by people who've done this for over 20 years. And signing with Flatspot matters. The label is the center of gravity for modern hardcore. Terror being on the same roster as Mind Force, Drain, and Pain of Truth positions them as part of the present, not just the past. The guest features on the album reinforce this. These aren't legacy acts holding up other legacy acts. These are connections across generations. My guess is Still Suffer is going to hold up. It's going to be remembered as proof that longevity doesn't have to mean decline. That a band can reach album 10 and still sound hungry. And that the hardcore scene, for all its gatekeeping and drama, still has room for the people who helped build it. So I'm curious, how many of you remember vocalisms? Drop your favorite vocalism in the comments.